Before the day truly begins, before the mind fills with plans and the body starts moving through routine, something very quiet is already happening inside you. Your body is deciding how it will handle sugar today. Not later. Not after lunch. Right now. And this is where morning food becomes powerful. A1C is not changed by dramatic diets or sudden effort. It shifts through small, repeated signals sent to the bloodstream every single day. When we choose foods that digest slowly and work gently with insulin, we are not fighting the body. We are working with its natural intelligence. Let's begin with the first morning food that lowers A1C naturally: whole oats or steel-cut grains. Not instant. Not flavored. Just whole. Inside your gut, the fiber in oats absorbs water and forms a soft gel. This slows how quickly glucose enters the bloodstream. Instead of a sharp spike that demands emergency insulin, the body receives a steady, manageable flow of energy. The pancreas doesn't have to rush. Cells don't have to resist. Over time, this calm daily pattern reduces average blood sugar, and A1C begins to fall, not forcefully, but naturally. Blood sugar is not just chemistry. It is rhythm. And the second food helps protect that rhythm: nuts and seeds. Almonds, walnuts, chia seeds. These foods barely raise blood sugar on their own, yet they profoundly influence how other foods behave. Their healthy fats slow digestion. Their minerals improve insulin sensitivity at the cellular level. Science calls this metabolic buffering, but in human terms, it simply means giving the body time. Time to respond instead of react. Time to balance instead of spike. Time to recover from years of rushed meals and constant glucose stress. Now, deeper inside the body, another conversation is taking place, one you cannot feel, but that strongly influences A1C. This is the conversation between your gut bacteria and your metabolism. The third morning food supports this dialogue: plain yogurt or unsweetened fermented foods. These foods nourish beneficial bacteria that reduce inflammation and improve insulin signaling. When inflammation goes down, insulin works better. When insulin works better, glucose stays out of the bloodstream and moves into cells where it belongs. This is not quick medicine. It is biological cooperation. And the body responds slowly, steadily, and permanently. Many people fear fruit in the morning, but biology teaches us to be more precise. The fourth food is berries. Small, deeply colored, powerful. Berries contain fiber and plant compounds that help muscles absorb glucose more efficiently. Instead of sugar lingering in the blood, it is pulled into cells and used for energy. Their sweetness is balanced by structure, by fiber, by nature's restraint. When eaten thoughtfully, berries do not raise A1C, they help lower it. What connects these foods is not a diet rule, but a principle. Morning meals that lower A1C respect the pace of human biology. They stabilize energy, calm insulin demand, and reduce the silent stress that elevated glucose places on every organ. When this becomes routine, you are not just improving a lab number. You are changing the internal environment of your body, creating conditions where balance is possible and healing can begin. This is not about control. It is about alignment. And when food aligns with physiology, the body does not resist change, it moves toward balance on its own. Before the day even begins, before the body encounters stress, movement, or emotion, a quiet metabolic decision is already being made. Blood sugar regulation does not wait for lunch or exercise. It responds immediately to the first signals of the morning. A1C, often misunderstood as a static number, is actually the memory of these daily moments repeated over weeks and months. Each morning meal becomes a message to the bloodstream, telling it whether today will be rushed and reactive or steady and balanced. This is why the first food of the day carries disproportionate influence, not through force, but through timing. The body in the morning is especially sensitive to glucose signals, and what enters the digestive system at this moment sets the metabolic tone for hours to come. Whole oats or steel-cut grains represent one of the most biologically respectful ways to begin this conversation. Unlike refined carbohydrates that dissolve quickly into sugar, whole oats retain their structural integrity as they move through the gut. Their soluble fiber absorbs water and forms a gentle, viscous layer that slows digestion. This physical change inside the intestine has profound consequences in the blood. Glucose enters gradually instead of flooding the system. Insulin is released calmly instead of urgently. Cells receive energy without being overwhelmed, and over time, insulin sensitivity is preserved rather than eroded. This process is not dramatic, and that is precisely why it works. The human body evolved to handle slow, predictable fuel, not sudden excess. When oats deliver glucose at a measured pace, the pancreas is spared repeated spikes in demand. Beta cells are allowed to function without strain. This reduction in daily stress, repeated again and again, quietly lowers average blood sugar levels. A1C responds not to intensity, but to consistency. Each calm morning adds another small vote toward balance. There is also something deeply human about this choice. Eating whole grains in the morning is an act of patience in a culture that rewards speed. It asks us to slow down, to accept that health is built through cooperation rather than control. From a scientific perspective, the gel-like fiber in oats also feeds beneficial gut bacteria, which further improves glucose regulation by reducing inflammation and improving insulin signaling. These effects are subtle, but biology favors subtlety when change needs to last. What makes oats powerful is not that they suppress the body, but that they support it. Energy arrives steadily, hunger is delayed, cravings soften, and the nervous system remains calmer throughout the morning. Cortisol, the stress hormone that raises blood sugar, is less likely to surge when the body feels nourished and stable. Over time, this harmony between digestion, hormones, and metabolism reshapes the internal environment, allowing glucose to be handled with ease rather than resistance, allowing A1C to drift downward as a natural consequence of respect for the body's rhythm, not as an aggressive intervention but as a quiet return to balance, a reminder that healing often begins with the smallest, most ordinary decisions we repeat at the same hour every morning, trusting that biology remembers what consistency feels like and responds accordingly. Blood sugar does not rise in isolation. It rises within a system shaped by timing, texture, and the presence of other nutrients. This is why the second morning food is not defined by sweetness or carbohydrates at all, but by its ability to influence how the body responds to everything else. Nuts and seeds enter the digestive process quietly, yet their impact on glucose regulation is profound. Almonds, walnuts, flax seeds, and chia seeds do not demand insulin in large amounts, but they change the metabolic environment in which insulin operates. They slow the pace of digestion, soften glucose absorption, and create a sense of internal steadiness that lasts long after the meal is finished. From a biological perspective, fats and proteins in nuts and seeds delay gastric emptying, meaning food leaves the stomach more slowly and enters the bloodstream at a controlled rate. This simple mechanical effect reduces post-meal glucose spikes and lowers the burden placed on insulin. At the cellular level, minerals such as magnesium play a quiet but critical role in insulin signaling, allowing glucose to move into cells with less resistance. When this process improves, blood sugar remains lower throughout the morning, and repeated daily, this reduction begins to influence A1C in a meaningful way. What is often overlooked is how nuts and seeds restore a sense of safety to the body. When energy arrives gradually, the nervous system remains calm. Stress hormones such as cortisol are less likely to surge, and cortisol itself is a powerful driver of elevated blood sugar. In this way, these foods regulate glucose not only through digestion, but through the nervous system as well. The body perceives stability, and stability encourages metabolic efficiency. There is also a long-term effect unfolding beneath awareness. The healthy fats in nuts and seeds reduce chronic inflammation, which is one of the most significant contributors to insulin resistance. When inflammation decreases, insulin does not have to shout to be heard. Cells respond more willingly. Glucose moves where it is needed instead of lingering in the bloodstream. This is not an overnight change, but biology does not require speed to succeed. It requires consistency. Nuts and seeds also shape appetite in a way that supports blood sugar balance throughout the day. They increase satiety, reducing the likelihood of mid-morning cravings that lead to refined carbohydrates and rapid glucose spikes. This ripple effect matters. One stable morning often leads to a more stable afternoon, and over time, fewer extremes accumulate in the body's metabolic memory. Choosing nuts and seeds in the morning is not about restriction. It is about adding structure and depth to the meal. It is a reminder that small, dense foods can carry powerful signals, telling the body that fuel is available, that it can slow down, that it does not need to overreact. Over weeks and months, this repeated message reshapes insulin sensitivity and lowers average blood sugar, allowing A1C to gradually reflect a system that is no longer rushing, no longer defending itself, but learning again how to respond with precision and calm, honoring the design of human metabolism rather than forcing it into compliance, trusting that when digestion is slowed and nourishment is complete, the body naturally chooses balance over excess and stability over strain. Every morning, long before conscious thought shapes our day, an unseen ecosystem begins to influence blood sugar in ways most people never consider. The gut is not simply a digestive tube. It is a metabolic organ, an immune regulator, and a communicator between food and glucose control. A1C is deeply affected by this internal environment, because inflammation and insulin resistance often begin in the gut. When the microbial balance is disrupted, insulin signals become distorted, glucose remains in the bloodstream longer, and blood sugar slowly rises over time. This is why fermented foods and plain yogurt hold such quiet power in the morning. Unsweetened yogurt and naturally fermented foods introduce beneficial bacteria that help restore balance to the intestinal ecosystem. These microorganisms do more than assist digestion. They produce short-chain fatty acids that strengthen the gut lining and reduce inflammatory signals sent throughout the body. When inflammation decreases, insulin receptors function more efficiently, allowing glucose to move into cells without excessive insulin release. This improvement may feel subtle, but biology accumulates subtle changes with remarkable patience. There is also a hormonal layer to this interaction. A healthy gut influences incretin hormones, which help regulate insulin secretion in response to meals. When these hormones function properly, the body releases insulin in proportion to the glucose load rather than in exaggerated bursts. This precision lowers post-meal blood sugar and reduces the long-term strain that contributes to elevated A1C. Over time, the body relearns how to respond rather than overreact. Fermented foods also slow digestion, not through fiber alone, but through changes in enzyme activity and gut motility. This extended digestion time smooths glucose entry into the bloodstream, creating a gentler metabolic curve. Instead of peaks and crashes, blood sugar moves in a controlled wave. Repeated daily, this pattern becomes the new normal, and A1C reflects the stability rather than chaos. There is something deeply restorative about this process. Feeding beneficial bacteria in the morning is an act of biological reconciliation. Years of stress, antibiotics, processed foods, and irregular eating patterns often damage the gut without obvious symptoms. Blood sugar becomes the messenger of that damage. By restoring microbial diversity, the body begins to heal from the inside outward. Insulin sensitivity improves not because it is forced, but because inflammation retreats. This approach also changes how the body experiences hunger and energy. A balanced gut communicates satiety more clearly to the brain, reducing erratic appetite signals that drive poor food choices later in the day. This indirect effect further protects blood sugar, preventing the cycle of spikes and crashes that slowly raise A1C. Each calm morning becomes a foundation for a calmer day. Choosing plain yogurt or fermented foods is not about quick correction. It is about restoring a biological conversation that was meant to guide metabolism with intelligence and restraint. When the gut is supported consistently, insulin signaling sharpens, inflammation softens, and glucose finds its proper place. Over weeks and months, this quiet cooperation reshapes the metabolic landscape, allowing A1C to drift downward as a reflection of internal harmony rather than effort, as the body responds not to pressure, but to nourishment that honors its complexity and patience, rebuilding trust between food, microbes, and metabolism, one morning at a time. Fruit in the morning often carries unnecessary fear, as though sweetness itself were a threat to metabolic health. Yet biology is more nuanced than that. Sugar becomes harmful not by its presence, but by its context. Berries exist within this nuance. They are small, deeply pigmented fruits designed by nature to deliver sweetness slowly, wrapped in fiber, water, and protective plant compounds. When consumed in the morning, berries behave very differently from refined sugars or fruit juices, and their influence on A1C reflects this distinction. The fiber in berries slows digestion and moderates how glucose enters the bloodstream. Instead of causing a rapid rise in blood sugar, berries release glucose gradually, allowing insulin to function efficiently. This slow absorption gives muscles and other tissues time to take in glucose for energy rather than leaving it circulating in the blood. Over time, this steady handling of glucose contributes to lower average blood sugar levels and a gradual reduction in A1C. Beyond fiber, berries contain bioactive compounds that influence metabolism at a deeper level. These plant compounds reduce oxidative stress, which damages insulin receptors and worsens insulin resistance. When oxidative stress is lowered, insulin signaling becomes clearer and more effective. Muscles respond more readily, pulling glucose out of the bloodstream with less hormonal effort. This process does not require large quantities of berries. Even modest, Consistent intake sends protective signals throughout the metabolic system. There is also a vascular dimension to their benefit. Healthy blood vessels improve glucose delivery to muscles, where it can be used or stored efficiently. Berries support endothelial function, allowing blood vessels to remain flexible and responsive. When circulation improves, glucose does not pool in the bloodstream but moves smoothly into tissues. This efficiency lowers post-meal blood sugar and reduces the burden that contributes to elevated A1C. Psychologically, berries play an important role as well. Their natural sweetness satisfies taste without triggering cravings for refined sugar. This satisfaction reduces the likelihood of seeking processed foods later in the day that cause dramatic glucose spikes. Blood sugar regulation is as much behavioral as it is biological, and berries help bridge that gap by aligning pleasure with nourishment. Eating berries in the morning also reinforces metabolic timing. Morning is when insulin sensitivity is naturally higher for many people, and berries take advantage of this window. Glucose is more readily absorbed by cells, minimizing prolonged elevation in the blood. When this pattern repeats daily, the body adapts, refining its glucose handling capacity rather than overwhelming it. The presence of berries reminds us that health does not require deprivation. It requires discernment. Nature rarely offers isolated sugar. It offers complexity, balance, and restraint. When berries are eaten as part of a thoughtful morning meal, they do not disrupt blood sugar regulation. They support it gently, reinforcing the body's ability to manage glucose with precision and calm. Over time, this respectful interaction between sweetness and structure reshapes metabolic memory, allowing A1C to reflect stability rather than fear, cooperation rather than avoidance, and trust in the body's ability to handle what it was designed to receive, slowly, intelligently, and in harmony with its own rhythm. What ultimately connects these morning foods is not a rule or a restriction, but a deeper biological principle that governs human health. The body thrives on rhythm, predictability, and respect for its internal timing. A1C rises when glucose appears in the bloodstream faster than the body can safely manage, day after day, creating a silent state of metabolic tension. When morning meals are built around stability rather than stimulation, that tension begins to dissolve. This is not because the body is being controlled, but because it is being supported in the way it was designed to function. Morning is a sensitive metabolic window. Hormones that influence blood sugar, including cortisol and insulin, are naturally shifting during these hours. A meal that overwhelms this transition forces the body into defensive mode, raising glucose and demanding rapid insulin release. In contrast, meals that digest slowly and deliver energy gradually allow hormones to work in harmony rather than competition. Over time, this harmony becomes measurable. A1C reflects the average environment in which red blood cells exist, and when that environment becomes calmer, the number follows. Stability in the morning also shapes behavior and physiology for the rest of the day. When blood sugar remains steady, energy is consistent, focus improves, and hunger signals are clearer. This reduces the likelihood of reactive eating later on, which often leads to refined carbohydrates and rapid glucose spikes. One stable morning quietly prevents multiple unstable moments that would otherwise accumulate in the body's metabolic memory. A1C responds to this accumulation, not to isolated perfection. There is also a nervous system component that is often overlooked. Rapid blood sugar changes activate stress responses, signaling the body to prepare for threat. Chronic exposure to this state increases insulin resistance and promotes inflammation. When morning meals are calming rather than stimulating, the nervous system remains grounded. Cortisol stays lower. Glucose production by the liver decreases. This internal calm supports metabolic efficiency and reduces long-term blood sugar burden. Perhaps the most powerful aspect of this approach is its compassion. It does not demand extreme discipline or constant vigilance. It relies on repetition rather than willpower. The body learns through experience, not instruction. When it repeatedly receives gentle, nourishing signals in the morning, it adapts. Cells become more responsive. Hormonal responses become more precise. Inflammation retreats. These changes unfold slowly, but they endure. Lowering A1C naturally is not about chasing numbers. It is about creating conditions where the body no longer needs to struggle. Morning food choices become a daily act of alignment, bringing digestion, hormones, microbes, and behavior into coherence. This coherence is what healing looks like at the biological level. It is quiet, patient, and deeply intelligent. When the internal environment supports balance, the body moves toward it without resistance. A1C becomes a reflection of that internal pace rather than a problem to be solved, mirroring a system that has rediscovered its rhythm, learned to trust its signals, and responded not to pressure, but to care repeated gently at the same hour each day, allowing physiology to remember what stability feels like and choose it again.